it's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, and welcome to Her Success Story. I'm Ivy Slater, and welcome back. We have another incredible guest today. So for those of you who are subscribers, welcome back. For those of you who are the subscribers to be, you're going to love hearing the journeys of the many, many women and dynamic people we talk to here at Her Success Story. Today, I have the honor and pleasure of talking to Julie Goldman. Julie is the founder of the original Wedding Runner company. Julie started this company as an inspiration from her own wedding, which I think is pretty damn cool. But she's not just, a fly-by-night girl here. She has a master's degree, a doctorate from Columbia University. She's a working mom. She has also been exposed from Shark Tank to NBC, Lifetime Television, Oxygen, Fox Business. She's a speaker in her own right, and she speaks on entrepreneurship as well as business growth, as well as spending an enormous amount of time growing and dedicated to the original Wedding Runner. So you might ask, where have I seen these wedding runners? Because I have to tell you, I asked myself that. And Kim Kardashian, Kevin Jones, Michael Jordan, Neil Diamond. I'm a little bit of a geek and a big Neil Diamond fan, so I'm loving hearing that. But Julie has really made an impact in a very, very specific niche market. And that's why I'm welcoming Julie Goldman today, because I would love to hear about women's fabulous success and how you've gotten there. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you, Ivy. It's really a pleasure to be here talking to you today.
So Wedding Runners got started from your wedding. Tell us about this.
Absolutely. So the company is the original runner company, and we were started in 2003 because when I was married, actually in 2000, I was married at a beautiful old venue, an old mansion. But unfortunately, in the ballroom section, the flooring was a combination of a mixture of carpeting, tile, and hardwood, and there was no consistent flooring. And I really, when you looked down the aisle, you saw more of a patchwork than an aisle. And I wanted to simply cover the area, but there was literally nothing on the market that wasn't plastic, like a child's party tablecloth, or paper, like a dryer sheet material. And I had to believe that other people were having black tie weddings that on a Saturday night who probably thought paper or plastic wasn't their best option like it is at the grocery store. So basically, I ended up creating something for myself, and I tea-stained fabric in my New York City apartment bathroom and in the tub, and then I hand-painted it with acorns and pine cones and leaves for weeks to create this autumnal look that I was looking for. And after my wedding, the florist and the planner, or the planner of the venue and things like that, kept getting phone calls regarding photos they'd seen from my wedding, and people wanted the runner, but it wasn't readily available anywhere. So after about a dozen calls over a year, my husband and I started thinking maybe this is something that other people would be interested in, and that it isn't just me. And often, as we all know, the mother of invention is necessity. And there definitely was a necessity and a need in the market for something of higher quality that people weren't going to slip on, they weren't going to trip. And so we've made all of our runners non-slip, and then we can customize them to pretty much look like everything from a yellow brick road to a handwritten letter from your loved one, really anything you can imagine.
And I love the fact, I out myself, I'm of an age, I'm starting to go to my friends' kids' weddings, okay? So, and family weddings and things like that. And that they don't slip, you reference the plastic and the crappy materials that they had been made, and you really took a stand on quality.
Absolutely. I think quality is the number one thing. That and customer service are the foundations of my company, because I'm not going to sell anything that I feel someone's going to get hurt on. And in fact, after 15 years, if you were to Google the original runner company, you won't find a negative review out there of anyone who had a bad experience using our product. And after 15 years, that is my proudest thing, to be honest, because it really
that is amazing. That's awesome.
It is. And honestly, the only bad reviews we get is when the Shark Tank episode re-airs and people just didn't like me personally. That's okay. I can handle that. But it's really important that the product I'm selling, if someone calls me and they want to install it in somewhere where we don't think it's going to work, we'll tell them that this isn't the right product, because I don't want to ever have photos out there of my product not working well in a situation because we recommended it. So I'd rather turn down business than put out images and, have things out there that are not going to promote the business, the brand, and the safety of the product. So that's a big part of it.
So you were in your apartment doing the thing for your own wedding. A few years later, you're still getting phone calls. In 2003, you opened this company. Did you open it like still staining and making the runners in your apartment, or how did you get started, and then how did you start scaling here?
Sure. So I came from a retail background. My parents owned retail stores, so I really grew up at the register. As soon as I could reach it, I had to work. And so I really have an entrepreneurial spirit. It was something that I've had other business. My husband, I had a company before this company, and even as a single individual right out of college, I had a consulting business. So I think it's in your blood. Often when you're an entrepreneur, you can't help it as much as you try to force it down. It will come back up and force you out there. And I do think that's really what happened in my situation. As you mentioned previously, my education is completely in a different field. I worked in a completely different field. But when this came about, I was like, well, let's see. So my husband and I decided, let's put a website up and let's see what happens. So we hired an artist out of what, you'll appreciate this, from the Village Voice, which no longer sadly exists in New York City. But back in the day.
Thank you for bringing that piece of nostalgia back.
So sad. And, literally you would open the newspaper to look for someone. And we found an artist in the Village, and we had him create sample runners that we photographed and put up on the website. And there were very few of them. And the very first day that I hit publish on that website, and this is 2003, when, you think there's a lot of internet out there, but there really wasn't in 2003.
No, there wasn't, actually.
It really, and shockingly, a woman called that day and ordered a runner. And I met her the next day in the basement of Penn Station, and she gave me cash. And which, nowadays would be crazy, but people did, because the internet wasn't a scary place back then, like it is now. But at the time, I was very fortunate to have a friend who owned buildings in New York City, and he gave me a very small studio apartment to work out of on the Upper West Side, where I was living at the time. And basically, it was me, a table, and a computer, and I was like, let's see what happens. And this girl ordered a runner, and although I'm crafty, I am not highly artistic, but I made the first few runners myself, and I made them, and she loved it. So, it's kind of an interesting push and pull of it. I wasn't really sure if it was going to work or not. And within a month, I received a call from a woman who was planning a wedding for Lifetime Television. So we ended up doing a runner that said, "And they lived happily ever after," down the runner, for this fairy tale wedding for a TV show that's no longer on Lifetime. But that is still our number one selling aisle runner, is the Happily Ever After runner. We do thousands of them per year. And that is really, really incredibly popular, especially with our larger corporate clients that have, multiple weddings at their venues and such, where that's pretty traditional.
So can I jump in here for 1 second?
Yeah.
So do you see, in the business development side of this, do you expend a lot of marketing and dollars towards the bride, and as well as the venues? Do the venues promote you, or the florists?
No.
Where else? How is this marketing?
Sure. So originally, I believe when I started the company, I thought I would be selling direct to brides. I believed a lot of things. I also didn't know anything about weddings. And that's the truth. I was not a wedding girl. I didn't have that binder since I was 12. I never even thought I'd get married. So I was not this, dreamy wedding who wanted to work in the wedding business. So I really knew nothing. And so it's interesting what you learn and what you think you know. I did think I would sell direct to brides, but 85% of my business is actually florists, event planners, corporate, colleges, and things like that. So I do sell direct to bride, but it is mostly 15% at the most of my actual business. And so what I really spend my marketing dollars on is marketing towards those vendor clients, because they're repeat customers. They're going to continue to bring me clients time and time again. I have a tremendous amount of clients who've been with me since day one. So for 15 years, I've been doing all of their events, and there are several venues that I work with where I've done all of their weddings for 15 years, and upwards of 50,000 weddings for one venue. So not 50,000, sorry, wrong number. 5,000 is what I was supposed to say. 5,000 weddings.
And that's an impressive number. Let's
it is, but 50,000 was not correct. But that does make, that's really what, we drives us is those relationships that we make with these, planners, of course, they can count on us, that we come through. It's often the bride adding it at the last minute. It's 3 weeks before a wedding, and she's like, wouldn't it be nice to have a runner? I want a runner now. And now, they're calling us, the florist, and saying, oh my gosh, now she wants, to add an aisle runner, and she wants it to have the entire, quote from whatever on it. And we can do that for them. And that's the relationship. They know that they can count on us, that we will always come through. We have never taken an order we couldn't fulfill, ever. Nice. So it's a big part of the customer service portion of the business.
So what's in growing and developing this business that you never expected to do in your life? What are some of the other, other than the concept of the business, what surprises have come your way, or anything significant that comes to mind when you were getting started, or even today?
I think the biggest surprise, quite frankly, is the knocking off in the competition. It really is. It's not that I didn't think it would happen. It's the absolute ballsiness of it, the absolute nerve of people that shocks me. When we decided to go on Shark Tank, that was a big consideration. When you go on Shark Tank, you open yourself up to the world, and knowing that there's someone in another country just waiting to knock you off. And that was a risk I was willing to take. But long before that happened, like the second year we were in business, I had sold to a woman, a bride out of the U.S., and she loved her runner so much that afterwards she called me and she said, I really want to be selling your product here in my country and this and that. And we tried to come to an arrangement where we thought maybe that she could be a distributor, and it just wasn't going to work out financially for either of us. And so that was that. Not a month later, this woman publishes a website that is an exact replica of my website, down to my logo, and just called herself a different name. I mean, every word for word of the website, every single thing, including the photos from her wedding, which were my runner, were on her website as her product. So that kind of nerve, she even bought my website in her country, and I had to sue her to get everything back, which I did. But it was a valuable lesson in, just because you wouldn't do it doesn't mean someone else wouldn't do it to you. I would never do that to somebody. I have such great respect for people who are creative and inventive that I would never steal an idea from someone. But people will do it, and you cannot put it past them. And it happens every day. We don't have a ton of competition. There's more like little bits on Etsy and places like that. But the couple people who compete with us genuinely copy every single thing we do. And it's very disappointing. I like competition who create their own path and not just take the path that I've cut through already.
So what have been some of your greatest successes that you honor?
It's funny. I always speak a lot on entrepreneurship, and one of the things I speak about the most is what is success. That you have to determine for yourself what success is. And I joke with my husband all the time that he's the only person who thinks I'm not successful because it's all because for him it's all about the dollars, right? How much am I earning personally? And as an entrepreneur, we all know that we don't all make a lot of money all the time. That's the nature of owning your own business, is the ebb and flow of it. But in the real, in the rest of the world, success can be determined in many different ways. For myself, the reason I would consider it to be my greatest success is that I started an industry that never existed, that there are dozens of little companies out there trying to compete with me around the world that never would be in place had I not done this. To me, I think that inspires people to look outside of what is and think what's possible. And so that, as much as I don't like competition, I do find that weirdly enough to be a success as well, that something that didn't exist, nobody did this, is now really commonplace. That's number one. But number two is I have a staff of 12 people that I've employed for upwards of 10 plus years. The first few years I had about 3 people, and then it's grown and grown and grown. And that we're, engaged, we're fully booked, that production is always in full production all year long, and that I'm, as a woman in this world, employing 12 people full time. And I actually think that's a huge success. I think that there are very few women-owned businesses. There are very few successful women-owned businesses, unfortunately. Less than 3% of all female-owned businesses make $1 million. And, with men, it's 5%, by the way, so it's not so much greater. But the idea that everyone thinks that your business isn't successful until you make $1 million, but that's not the reality of what success is. And when we hit that number and we went over it, it didn't change what happened in my company one day to the next. Once your revenue changes, it just means that you have higher expenses. It doesn't necessarily mean you're making more money. So I so have to jump in there, because it's so true. My husband and I are both, entrepreneurs, business owners. We have been for many, many years, 2 different companies, different worlds. But, we talk about this push around reaching 7 figures in sales,
and that it's such a big freaking deal. But it doesn't matter what you sell. It matters what the profits are. And, you know, I think there's a little something that's getting skewed in the marketplace out there, and in the promotion and the marketing around, you know, having a $1 million business versus having, I don't care what the numbers are, but let's look at profitability and then how that impacts you, your business, your life, and your employees.
100%. And unfortunately, if you really, you know, there's a lot of entrepreneurship groups out there for women and for men, or co-ed, whatever, and a lot of them have the word $1 million in them, a lot. And the concept that you're only a really established company and you're really only successful if you make $1 million. I don't subscribe to that personally. If I made less than $1 million a year in revenue, but I was consistent, to me, and even if there's not tremendous growth, but you're paying your bills and you're getting paid, there's nothing to be scared, you know, nothing to be looking down at, to be honest, in my opinion. I think that people think flat is down, but flat isn't down, it's flat. And in this world we're living in, if you're alive and you're paying people and you're still successful, then to me that is success. That's the definition. But I think there's a balance to that. You know, I never thought the business would be where it is now. I never wanted to be the face of the business. I never thought that I would be on television, like none of that. So that could be a measure of success in itself, that I was able to take this really niche idea, which most people like, it's like the worst cocktail party job description ever. You know, when we go to a cocktail party and someone says, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I work in special events. And then if they're really interested, they'll push past that, you know. But if they're not interested, they're like, oh, okay, fine. But it isn't the easiest thing to explain. I'm like, you know, when you go to a wedding and you have an aisle runner that goes down the center, I have to explain the entire thing. So I think that the small idea being able to be something that when I meet people, they're like, oh my God, I love your company. To me, that's the greatest gift, you know, that I've actually, maybe I'm building something that's sustainable, that other people appreciate. You know, in days where I'm feeling like I don't want to do it anymore, I think, like, what would people do if I closed my doors? You know, meaning that there are people who count on me. There are people who count on our business. And so I think that to me is what, you know, is a big measure of success for myself, is that I've made an impact in some way.
So how do you balance running your company? You said you didn't, when this whole started and it started taking off, you had no intention of being the face of this company, and then you kind of got pushed out the door on that, you know, and pushed up in the front, as well as what you're also doing is being a guest lecturer and a speaker on entrepreneurship and small business, and a leader amongst those ranks.
You know, it's funny. I've always been an outspoken person, so that's probably not as surprising. I just was never, I didn't name it Julie's Aisle Runners because I wanted the ability to sell it someday. That's the truth. I always have an exit strategy in mind, of course, and my plan was always to build the business to a place when I'm ready that I can sell it. And that is still my plan. I'm not ready yet, but someday I will be. And when I am, I think I've built something strong enough, sustainable enough that someone else could take it on and incorporate it into their business, you know, fold it into something pre-existing or run it independently. So that's, you know, one piece of it. But it was really Shark Tank that sort of pushed me up front more than I wanted to be, obviously, and changed things. I was already speaking on entrepreneurship. Due to my doctoral degree, I've been speaking at Fordham for years in their entrepreneurial program and things like that. So that's something I'm really comfortable in and I'm passionate about. Unfortunately, I feel a lot of people who go into their own business love the idea of what they're doing, but they don't understand the business side, which is why most businesses fail. And I feel like if giving that education, that piece to understand that there are, you know, things that you need to understand. If you're not good at it, those are the pieces you need to hire someone to do. Because the time that you mess around trying to figure it out is such wasted time. So I'm a big believer in delegating and hiring the right people to get stuff off my desk that I know I'm just going to dwiddle around with and not get done. And that's what really keeps my business moving forward and keeps me moving forward. And in my personal life and my professional life, I personally believe that if you cannot get to it and it keeps being pushed to your next list, you need to hire someone else to do it. So that's, I think, a big, big part of it is making sure that you have a handle on all your pieces and that they're moving forward every day.
Love that. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I think many, many of us underestimate our own ability in delegating. And I love that you included not just your business, but in your personal life. You know, I've talked about myself, like I see, you know, as a speaker and a business owner, et cetera, one of my greatest resources is my dry cleaner. Like, go to the dry cleaner, Okay, we have a trip cut, right? You know, I've always known my dry cleaner on a first name basis. They know me on a first name basis. You need to pull together your resources based on your business, your life,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
have those at your fingertips.
Absolutely. I think that is, and I often, my husband will joke all the time that I often say to him, like, that's not worth my time. He wants to get a cord of wood delivered for our winter, for our fire, and he's like, we'll just dump it in the driveway and we'll stack it all. I'm like, no, that's not worth my time. And then I'll get hurt, so that doesn't work. But because, where they would dump it and where I need to stack it was up a flight of stairs and this and that, and I'm like, how is that a better use of my time than doing something else? And I think we all have to look at that and decide that. And, often when I speak, one of the things I often, and this is one of my favorite exercises for you all that are listening, and you could do this on a simple piece of paper, is divide up 3 columns, and the top is love it, second one's hate it, third one's not good at it. And so basically everything you love about your business that keeps you going every day, that motivates you, goes in your first column. Everything in the second column is things that you can do but you really hate doing it, so you push it off every single day, but you could do it if you wanted to. And the third one could be accounting or something that you're not great at, that if you really can't do it. Anything in those 2 other columns you should be hiring someone else to do, because if it's not in the first column, you shouldn't be touching it. That's my take on it, because those are the things that will keep you back. Those are the things that you spend an entire day messing with. I can speak personally on my QuickBooks. For me, I get to a point where I do all my QuickBooks myself, and I do all that. But when we get to tax season, I just pass it all completely off to my accountant. I'm like, reconcile and have a good time, but I'm out. And I think that you need to know where your time is better spent. And for years, I messed around with it for days, and I was like, why am I doing this? This is silly. And so now I just don't anymore. And I think that that's everything, whether it's cleaning your own office, if that takes up too much of your time, or it's your filing. We have someone who comes in once a week and does all my filing for me, because I just cannot be, I don't have the time to do it when I'm sitting in my office until 7 something at night, and I really want to be home. Then I need to use my time more efficiently.
A woman after my own heart, I will say. I don't file. So speaking of being home, some of your other major accomplishments, and as a leader amongst women and women business owners, is how to do this whole motherhood thing.
It's funny. I actually think it's incredibly difficult. I had my business before I had my daughter. I have one child, and she's turning 13 in just a couple of weeks.
Oh, congratulations.
And it's a lot. You get into middle school and that age, and it's changing every day. But when she was an infant, and I had planned to, when she was born, I had planned to take off 2 months, and I took off 3. And I had, from day one, she was challenging my time, and I had to figure out how to prioritize. And so I would bring her into the office with me one day a week, and she would lay on the floor under my desk, and the artists had all made a mobile under my desk of things that hung down, and we just made it work. And I think that as a mom, you do. I can't speak for everybody. I have an involved husband, and I'm very fortunate that way, but I still do 90% of it. That's just the nature of, I think, the way that women are raised in this country. Hopefully that's changing, but that is the generational gap that I think we're in. And part of that is, understanding that when there's a play date to be made, or a dress needs to be bought for a dance, or, lessons need to be signed up for, I'm still the one who does all that. And that can take up a significant portion of my day. I'm planning a bat mitzvah right now for my own daughter. You talk about time sucking. That's a time suck and a half. And it really does. And as a working mom, I find that to be one of the more complicated things, is being a really good parent at the same time. I personally take parenting incredibly, as a huge responsibility, meaning that, like, I know I'm raising this person, then I'm going to set her out into the world and hope that she's a good person. Like, that's a huge job, right? And I take it super seriously. So I don't phone it in, and being able to do both sometimes can be a real challenge. And that's when I'll say to my staff, like, I'm going to take tomorrow off. I need to go get these things done. I need to prioritize, or I'll go out, leave early so I can be home for dinner, which isn't that often, to be honest. We don't have dinner with my daughter that often. She needs to eat a lot earlier than I get home from work. And, we have to find those times in other places. So, I get up every morning with her, and we spend an hour together every morning instead. So I don't spend the time with her at night as much as I wish I could sometimes, but I do during the day, for meals. But I think it's that fine line, that balance of making sure. So, like, as I mentioned previously, I grew up in retail. My parents owned stores that were open 6 to 7 days a week. My parents were never around on the weekends. So I had pledged to myself my entire life I would never work on the weekends so that I could be there. And I don't work on the weekends. Weekends is 100% family time. And so I think we all have to set aside the times that work best for us. For my husband and I, we can't do as much during the week as we wish with our daughter, but the weekends is completely family time. I barely even answer emails over the weekend. and less
And
exertion.
from what I'm hearing you say is you have taken and honed doing it your way. So you drew the line in the sand. There is no weekend working. That's it.
Yeah.
It's, I know by making these decisions, I'm going to have to compromise on dinners. So instead we're doing this. So you actually created boundaries and live by your rules.
I do. And, it's a huge commitment, and you have to make sure that you're making that time, and I can tell when I'm not home enough. When I walk in the door and she's glued to me, then I know that she's not seeing me enough, so I'm not spending enough time. It's not like I see her every day. It's sounding like I'm not spending time with her during the week, which I do, but it's hard when my time with her is 7 to 9 p.m. I'm exhausted. She's exhausted. Everybody's cranky. So that really isn't great quality time because there's a test tomorrow. She needs to take a shower. I'm in real mom duty when I get home. And I think that's the hardest part for every working mother is that, you get up in the morning. Personally, I get up, I'm with her for an hour, then I do go and, work out, then I come straight to work. I'm here for X amount of hours, and then I go home and I'm on mom duty. I'm doing homework, I'm doing test quizzing, I'm, setting up stuff for the next day, I'm grocery shopping, whatever it is. There is a life outside your business, and not all of us are in a situation where we have people doing all of that stuff for us. And because of that, I think that there's a fine balance between the two of making sure that one of the other doesn't get neglected. Last year, I had someone go out on maternity leave unexpectedly, and it left us extremely short-staffed. And so I was on the phone selling way more than I normally do, but it meant that I was not home ever. I mean, there was a 2-month period I really wasn't home at all, and it was horrible. And it was horrible for me and my family and for everybody. There was nothing good about it. And that changed the way I look at my business and myself. And I said, never again. That ended up happening out of a wonky set of circumstances because we did hire someone to cover for this person, and it didn't work out. 3 people later, it still didn't work out. So it just was a bad, and once you're in it, you can't even hire anybody once you're knee deep in it. So it was a bad situation, but it did teach me a really valuable lesson that I can overextend myself. Even at this point in my career, even at this point in my life, I should know better. And I did. I was woefully overextended, and nobody really benefited, not my company, not my family. So live and learn. We can all do that every day, and I'm still learning.
So as you're sharing great tips, because I think the wherewithal to know when we're overextending and how to take control of it, because very often we're doing it when things skyrocket out of control and we lose the perspective or the objectivity to say, oh, damn, I got to get this under control. I need to do this, this, and that. We just kind of get sucked into the vortex.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that you're sharing, be aware of overextending. What other tips do you have for our listeners?
I think overall, there's a million tips, but I think, when it comes to owning your own business, there's one I always say, which is from day one, have a CRM, which is a client relationship management tool. From day one. I did not have one when I started, mainly because they weren't that prevalent in 2003. But quite frankly, it's just the most important thing is the money is in the follow-up in everything you do. I don't care who you are. I'm sure everyone listening has had an experience where they've brought in contractors to bid on a small project in their home, let's just say. How many of them actually get back to you? Even the ones who might even send you a price, they still won't follow up with you to see if you're interested and pursue you. And there is no follow-up in our society. It's terrible. And the people who do follow up are the ones you don't want to, the telemarketers or things like that, or bill collectors. But in general, I personally find that I often feel people don't even want my business when I'm trying to hire someone, and I think that's something I rally against every day is I want you to know, A, I want your business, B, I want to help you, and, C, I'm going to make it awesome for you. And so those messages need to be sent all the time. I think the average is 7 touches to make a sale, that you need to touch someone 7 times. I think
minimum.
Now they say it's more, right? They say it's more now.
It is more. It's 7 to 12 now. And
I was going to say that. Exactly. Yeah.
And if you start looking at social media and touching them, possibly through listening to a podcast or sending them a link to this or touching them through LinkedIn. And there's so many different ways, but truly real touches now is 7 to 12.
And I say that to people who work for me, the younger people I hire, they think I'm insane because millennials don't even pick up their phone. Phone calls.
You and I can have a cocktail over that.
phone calls are a dead way to reach people. I mean, people look at their phone. If they don't know the number, they are not answering it. So every phone call we make, we follow up with an email. I just tried calling you. Your voicemail was full or whatever. And it is a big part of the business. So going back to that whole relationship, the CRM is what's going to allow you not only monitor how often you're touching the person, but if you have people working with you, they can see the notes on everything you've promised. So we just had someone call 2 minutes ago for pricing, and my very smart salesperson was able to look up their phone number in our system as she's speaking to them. And she's like, oh, so I see you've already spoken to Julie and that you got pricing. And they were pretending they had never spoken before, as if they'd get different pricing. So this allows you to be a really educated salesperson and also a really educated owner, so that you know what's going on in your business. It allows you to run reports and that stuff, but it's also does all that automatic following up for you if you are large enough to do that, which makes your company look bigger than it is. I can't thank every person who requests swatches through my website personally, but my system says, thank you so much for requesting swatches. They're on their way. And when we send them and we hit that, it automatically sends them an email and says, your swatches are on their way. Please let us know if you have questions. Those are emails I don't have to write now. And if you're a small company, it is the only way that you can touch a lot of people at one time. It's critical. So I think the CRM is one of my favorite things, and people think they only need it when they're big, and you can do something as small as there's free versions that you could do as well. You don't have to pay a lot for it. That's my big one. And other than that, I think that when it comes to business, it's all about the ask. You can't be afraid to ask. There's a lot of people who speak on the subject of the science of the ask, that people are just afraid to ask. So currently, my company is supporting a breast cancer charity for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we're trying to collect for these lipsticks for this organization, and everyone is afraid to ask. And I'm like, you can't be afraid to ask. And as soon as people in my office started asking, next thing you know, lipsticks started showing up at our office every single day. When nobody asked, nothing showed up. You have to ask. And so when I first started, I reached out to companies who I admired in the event space but weren't competition. We didn't do the same thing. And I just called them up directly and said, I think your company is really awesome. I saw it in this. How did you get in this magazine? How did you get that wedding? And several of them are still mentors and friends that I'm in touch with 15 years later, when all I did was call them blindly out of nowhere and said, I admire what you're doing and I'm about to start. Would you mind giving me a few minutes of your time? It's all about the ask.
So I'm going to jump in on that and say, I saw you speak through a mutual friend. And at the conclusion, before the evening was over, I went up to you and I said, hey, Julie, can I ask you to be on Her Success Story, my podcast, which brought us to be here today. And listeners, let me, complete disclosure. This is a little before wedding season. And Julie's like, yeah, love to, absolutely. And then got back to us several times and said, I can't right now. It's wedding season. We're really busy. And my company's team, Slater Success, and I stayed in contact with Julie's people to make today happen.
Yes, absolutely. And I am sorry about that, but sometimes you don't know how busy you'll be or not be. I really did want to do this, but it's funny you bring that event up that we met at, because what was interesting to my takeaway on that event is there were several people, as you know, that I spoke to about their companies there. And I said, reach out to me. I have a great idea for you. I have a great contact for you. And I always leave it to them to reach back. And very, very few did. And especially the ones I had really good ideas for them or really good contacts, and they would just, they just disappeared. And I was like, it's the power of the ask, and you can't be afraid to. People are more willing to help, I personally think, than people think they are. I think it's how you go about it, how you ask, and the approach of it is important. But I do believe that, often, but it has to be the right connection. Sometimes I get asked, for example, to mentor people or to work with them in an industry that I literally know nothing about, and I don't believe that I will be helpful in. So I think you have to make sure that you're connecting it with someone in a way that they know they can be helpful for you, or that they believe they're going to be helpful in a way that will grow your business forward versus some generic advice that they could get from a book. It needs to be industry specific, I think.
Absolutely. And I share that, ladies and gentlemen, because we asked, I got up there and I just asked Julie, and we had to stay in. And what Julie's tips is you have to ask and you have to stay in the follow-up. It was our responsibility to stay in that follow-up. It was ours. We asked. So you have to own and take the responsibility. I love the tips that you're sharing, Julie. Share with our listeners how they could find out more about the Original Runner Company.
Sure. So our website is originalrunners.com, and we are also Original Runners on Instagram, which is my last tip probably my last tip. I don't know if we're wrapping up, but 70% of my business comes through Instagram now. 70. So if you're not on Instagram,
big number.
Yes, it's a huge number. And it is the way that things are switching. We used to get a ton of business from Facebook. Facebook changed their algorithm a little over a year ago and dead, completely dead. Pushed everybody to Instagram.
Yeah.
And I've taken the time over the last year to educate myself by meeting with people whose specialties are Instagram and social media marketing to educate myself, because as someone who is almost 50 years old, I didn't grow up with it the way some people did, right? And so I needed to make sure I understood it as well as any 20-something. And that's really important. You're not too old for technology. You're not too old to learn something or anything like that. Not that I ever thought I was, but things are changing rapidly. And as a business owner, if you're not on top of it, I'm amazed at the number of businesses that are not on Instagram. It's really insane. If you're not on Instagram, please sign up today, get an account, start liking people in the industry that you're in, start following and commenting on posts of people you would like to work with. I've ended up building relationships through Instagram with people I've never met before, and then we meet in person, and it's like I've known them, and I've never even met them. And that's really the magic of social media. Isn't puppy pictures all day long. It really is a significant business tool, and you have to know how to use it.
Love that. And we are going to wrap up. So check out Julie Goldman's The Original Runner Company. It's originalrunners.com. Don't panic, people. All of it will be in the show notes. If you have not yet gone to Instagram and checked out Original Runners, you want to. I follow it. And I'm past bride season, but I know one day I have a couple of kids, being this working mother myself, that we're going to be wanting to know more about this. So, Julie, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for being a great speaker and, more than anything, a great leader amongst women.
Thank you. I mean, I really appreciate you asking me to be on the show and on having this show. I think women in business need to be heard more. We need to understand that we are no different than men in business, but that we have great backgrounds in education, and you're putting it out there, and I think that is tremendous. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Listeners, remember, you want to be on top of next week's episode and continuous getting great interviews from our guests. So subscribe to Her Success Story. See you next time.